It's my honor to get up and to recognize and to tribute our 12-year colleague in the state assembly. Came as a new era of assembly member and served with distinction, and has been my seatmate for half of my term here, 5 years. You're making me nervous. You're standing up. Yes. Can you sit down for a little bit? And as my seatmate, we bicker a lot, like Jackie and Evan. We're always in fights over here. So this is just normal here. So Brian represents, I think, what we all strive to be, a leader who makes a difference, but also has courage and conviction. His votes, your record here, and your journey. As many of you know, he came up here as a moderate Republican, and he leaves as a moderate Democrat. But your values haven't changed. I told you when you change parties, it's not going to be that complicated because your votes have always been the same. Choice issues, environment, LGBT issues, taxes, public safety. Most of your votes hadn't changed. In your view, the party and the leadership had changed and made it something that you could not be with anymore. So you made some tough choices to change parties, and it was hard on your family. You got threats, not just to take you out, but to take you out. And that wasn't easy. But you always took the tough votes here. I remember when you were early on in your career, there was a really tough vote that Tony Atkins wanted to make this change on housing policy and have a fee to create a fund to build affordable housing. The bill was dead. And you put up your mic, and you're like, oh my God, he's going to speak on this and vote. Like, his career is over, people said. No. You voted your convictions, and the people back home trusted you. And when you became a Democrat, you asked the Speaker, Rendon, to have me as your seatmate. You're like, what could go wrong? My red button doesn't work. It barely works. And I'm supposed to advise you on what to do. And but I always, I think, gave you good advice. And every once in a while, people came around with little vote cards. Said, Maienschein, go up on my bill. And he'd say, there's all these other people here who aren't voting on it, and they're not targets, and you're coming to me. And then he'd look over at me, and he said, F it. He said, what's the right thing to do? And I said, well, it's a tough vote. You know, I'm not sure people back home. And he'd more than likely make a tough choice. Because you said that it's more important than always coming back here. It's doing what you believe in. So I met you about 10 years ago. And it was right after the legislative softball game, which, by the way, he did win the MVP last night. The only three-time MVP of the legislative softball game. He won it fair and square. After the game, about 10 years ago, we were here the next day, and I'm like, we should have a bipartisan team that plays in a city rec league with Republicans and Democrats. Isn't that a crazy idea? And you're like, no, let's do it. So the next year we did it, and it was amazing. And to my younger colleagues, I will say that I had some Republicans on that team, and I got votes for bills that I would have never gotten votes for bills because I hung out with people on the other side. And so we had this really fun run for 5 years. We went out there and had the opportunity to play legislative softball, and we always cherish our bipartisan team game here we play over at Rayleigh Field. And so that's something that I'll always remember about you. But I know you have your daughters here with you, the Maienschein crew, and your lovely wife, Ellie. And when I met you, your girls were younger, and you were a single dad. And you had to fly home, miss games. And it was hard on you, and I saw it. And I'm a girl dad, too. My life is much easier. I can walk home to my house in 35 minutes. I never have to miss games. But you did. But you always made sure that you had their back. So I know that you are super well liked here. Everybody likes you. I know it was tough on some of your people across the aisle when you made that switch. But everybody respects you here. And that's, I think, the measure. As long after we're gone, what are people going to think about you? People thought you were a good person. You left your mark. You wrote important bills, legal issues, public health issues, conservatorship reform. You made a difference. And public service has been your calling. You're not done. You're going to go back home and serve your city of San Diego as a city attorney, representing the people, being the people's attorney for the second largest city in California. Continue to make a difference and make your family proud. Thank you.
I'll piggyback off my colleague from Sacramento's comments. I mean, I'm so glad to see your daughters here. And just so you know, Taylor and Brenna, your dad is first and foremost a girl dad, even before the 3-time MVP softball championship. I kind of think he actually ran for the assembly so he could play softball, but it's a secret suspicion, but I'm not sure. But first and foremost, he was a girl dad. He would give everything else out for that. His schedule revolved around your schedule as best he could. All his flights home. I mean, you know, he'd always be the first one here on Thursday because he's trying to get to his, 11 a.m. flight to San Diego, because he wanted to get home to you. That was the priority. Most of the time that we would spend together in talking, a lot of times colleagues get together, we talk bills, you talk about what's happening in the Capitol. I think, when Brian and I would get together, it's almost always talking about family, talking about my girls, your girls, talking about really what's most important in our lives. And I think that was really what bonded us. And Ellie, he is so thankful to be with you. I just want to tell you that. He is, and that's the word he uses, thankful, gratitude. And this is, this job is tough on a family. It is tough. But Brian always, he's got to come from one of the farthest parts of the state, but Brian always made it work. That was something that was completely one of his priorities. He was, as our colleague mentioned, a city council member. You're the first commissioner on homelessness. So when you got up here, championing issues around Medi-Cal, really championing issues around human services, that was something that you led with. That was something that you really brought to your heart with. And going back to, I think, what our colleague from Sacramento talked about, it takes incredible courage to stand up for what you believe in. For me, I would say it's a little bit easier in my district. I think our colleague from Sacramento's district, we just keep hitting the green button. It's kind of, that's what people at home kind of send us up here to do. You have to think a lot more about the nuances. You have to think a lot more about how you're going to vote. San Diego's changed. You haven't changed at all, but the city has changed. The politics and the demographics have changed. And when you made your decision to switch parties, even our governor, I can't say what the governor said exactly, but even our governor said it showed a huge amount of guts. And I don't think that any of us can truly appreciate that. The kind of courage it takes. I mean, we heard about our colleague from Riverside. I remember that vote. I think a lot of people that night, we thought we were going to lose people. Their careers were ending. I'm sure that you debated long and hard. You sat with your family, not just the four of you, but really everybody, your extended family, your parents, about how big. It's not a small decision. It's a huge decision in the impact it would have on your life. And the fact that you were able to do it, to go through it, and come out of the other side, and like our colleague said, your votes didn't change, your policy positions didn't change, but somehow you had to go do this. And this was what you needed to do for yourself, for your staff, really for your community. It's more courage than, frankly, I can imagine myself. And so I have a huge amount of respect for you, for your ability to show your guts. I'm just very thankful also to call you a dear friend in the times that we have been able to spend together and really share and not really talk about what we're doing at work, but really just share about what's most important to us, really, which is what's going on at home. So again, we know that you have bigger things to do. I know San Diego can't wait to have you back. I know your family can't wait to have you back. I will miss you. It just means I'll have to make more trips down to San Diego. But again, thank you for the friendship.
Thank you to my colleagues here today. And thank you to Mr. Ting and Mr. McCarty for your very kind words. This has been a great experience. You know, every single time I walk out, walk into these, look at these columns, I think I can't believe I'm here. I really can't. I'm like, what am I doing here? I see my name up there, and I'm 12 years in. And still this morning when I looked up there, I'm like, wow, that's some Maienschein guy is here. That's cool. It's been such a tremendous honor. And I just want to make sure I don't forget things. I am feeling it's kind of all hitting me right now. But, you know, sometimes, you know, some people don't go through one tough election. I've been through 3. It's a little bit of work to do that, and I'm proud of being able to do that. I am proud that I did have the courage of my convictions and wondering where that was going to go, and to see things that had changed around me that I didn't feel I could any longer be a part of and wanted to change. I want to thank all the people who stood by me right outside there, and you guys remember that day probably, a lot of you, when you all stood by my side. I see the nods. How much that meant, you know, standing up there not knowing what was going to happen next. I'm proud that I'm the first person that did change parties and get elected. That's something that I'll always be able to carry with me, but it wouldn't have happened without the love and the support and the welcoming of so many people in this room. And I have that picture up. It will always be up, and seeing the smiles on your faces and the welcoming that you gave me will never be forgotten. I want to thank my constituents, of course, who sent me up here, who wanted me to do the work, who didn't care that the letter changed next to my name, but they wanted me to come up here because they felt they could trust me to vote for them, and I hope I've made them proud by doing that. I think about the bills that I've done, a whole lot of areas that were important to me, whether it's mental health, homelessness, all those that we've gotten to get done and to do the work of the people of California. I would be remiss, of course, if I didn't say how much I've loved helping to run legislative softball with my buddy. He's right. He's right. You know, it's funny, when I switched parties, they said this is going to be very difficult, of course. And I didn't ask for anything when I switched parties. The only thing I did ask for is, you know, could I just pick who I sit by? And they said, okay. And then I said, Mr. McCarty. And the speaker said, are you sure? And I was sure. And he did always have my back. You're right. It was easy when he walked away to help him with the voting because his red button doesn't work. But he always advised me and was sound advice for me, and a sound friend. We do bicker periodically, that's true, but we're usually bickering over how we're going to try to advantage our team in the legislative softball game, and that's been our most heated arguments, where one of us have had to walk away before we'd say something we regret to one another. But that's been great fun here, and it was great fun that we set up this softball league, and a lot of us got to get out there and do something outside of here. I want to thank my staff who's here, and all my staff who've been with me since the beginning. I had great staff, and this work wouldn't have gotten done. I want to recognize a couple people in particular. A lot of people don't know where their best friend even is from when they were 12 years old, but I know where mine is, and he's in the office next to mine, so thank you, Lance. While it's true Lance is my right-hand man, Shayna Ezell is my left-handed woman. I look forward to the next 25 years with Shayna. I want to recognize Sarah, too, for Oy Landeros, for always having my back, and all my great staff who are here in support. I want to thank the San Diego contingent, Chris and Tasha and Akila and David, for making those airplane rides at least a little bit better, and for the bonding that we've gotten to do at the airport as we raced home. I look forward to now being able to call you up with bill ideas, and I hope you'll be responsive to those. And all the friends that I've made here, all of you, you're all welcome in San Diego. what I'm going to take away from this is all the great work that we've gotten to do together and all the time that we spend together up here away from our families, away from our homes. I want to thank you for that, for making this. You know, you don't get to pick who you get elected with. All 80 of us come from somewhere, and we're all very different. I mean, look at us, right? But I've gotten to come together with you all and make these lifelong relationships. We'll always remember the time that we had. I know I will always remember the time that I have with each and every one of you. I'm going to try to get through this. Can you get my water? I started as a single dad. And I'm ending with a wife, so I did pretty good, huh? I don't see anyone else here saying that, so I got you there. But it's not just a wife, that it's Ellie. Your kindness, your decency, your strength. It's the best thing that's happened to me, so thank you. And to my girls. Not always easy being a single dad. But we did it together. It's been a great honor to be an assembly member, but the bigger honor is being your dad. And I'm so grateful for the young women that you are, the characteristics that you have. And if I've done nothing else in my life, raising you has been the best thing that I've ever done. So thank you. Thank you all for this great honor.